Wow, that was quick. Yeah, I just had it already buffered and such. So anyway, I have to close the other window and get the old mouse to work. Mouse, what is wrong with this mouse? Well, it's too good to throw out, so I have to just hope it will eventually figure out how to work. Pause that, and I can see the chat crap. So, I thought, this whole electron thing has got me a bit interested in the acceleration of the electron and what's, it's sort of producing, exchanging stuff moving in different directions. Anyway, so I was just kind of thinking about the old cathode ray tube televisions, and it occurred to me, stuff just occurs, that an enhanced perspective now on some of some of the obviousness of what's happening. And so it was always interesting that electrons are being impelled to move by creating the idea of a cathode ray tube was a positive negative charge. The electrons move from the negative to the positive, fly through the air, so to speak. So you charge the plates. And then to complicate things, now you create a magnetic field, a cone around where the electron's traveling. That's what's around the tube of the cathode ray tube is a big magnet, electromagnet, and that controls the direction of the electron, where it's going to end up going, the stream of electrons as they're moving from the gun. So it's just one dot at a time, just moving across the screen. So it's using just one stream, one beam of electrons to create the image on the fluorescent goop. So yeah, that's the basic diagram of what's happening. So it's so clearly obvious that here you have these electrons with momentum moving, hitting, and then what's happening is the bits are flying out, right? Because now their acceleration stops because they hit the target, and when they do so, the consequence of the deceleration, the only way you can have deceleration is to release the stuff inside of you going not with your deceleration. So the stuff's still moving that way that you have to get rid of. So if you have more bits in you moving in a direction and you're no longer going to be moving in that direction as a school of fish, so to speak, you have to release that direction. And you'll acquire some other direction in the process. And it's exactly the opposite when you left. You did exactly the opposite thing in the sense that you released something to gain the acceleration, and that's the accelerating charge creating the electromagnetic force. And what they're really doing, though, is exchanging polarization, which makes it a little more complicated. Because in a sense, the stuff is still going. It's just that you've changed how it's labeled when it leaves. So what I really need to do is find a good metaphor, a good way to analogize the concept of polarization, maybe using color. And then to realize that that's what you're really talking about is your movement is your color, so to speak. So if you could say that standing still was white, balance, and then as you gain more blue, then it means you go in the blue direction. If you gain more red, you go in the red direction. They would all have perpendicular, the three primary colors, that they would have perpendicular polarizations or directions. And then you could say whatever mixture of those three components. See, this is something else. These videos are just so valuable. I mean, that was just sitting right there in front of me. It's just sitting there right in front of me. And this goes back to when I was a kid. As frightening as that. I just realized. So I was always, as a kid, I was fascinated with the number 3. So I thought everything was somehow connected to this number 3. All right, it's kind of a numerology thing, but I never even heard of numerology. But I just thought it was like, I thought in terms like sun, earth, moon. I said, yep, that's 3 components. You know, that's basically how the system works. And so I kept seeing the 3 in all these kind of different kinds of systems. Like tree would be tree, roots, trunk, branches, that kind of thing. I mean, it was always, or you could go just, roots, branches, leaves. And, it was always this, I was always seeing this 3 thing, 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. And the fact that there are 3 dimensions, it just never really occurred to me. I don't know why. I mean, I never took the 3rd dimension seriously because it always sounded like some kind of, like 2 dimensions you kind of knew. That 3rd dimension always seemed kind of wacky. Like, what are you talking about? I live in 2 dimensions. I don't really live in 3. But I never really thought about up, down, left, right, forward, back. So it's kind of obvious. But anyway, so that's just kind of funny that I never even considered the 3 dimensions as part of my obsession with 3. You think I would have realized that there's 3 dimensions? That's a really big 3, Gary. You should have figured that one out. But anyway, so that's what we come down to is this idea of there are 3 dimensions. That's the really big 3 thing, and 3 primary colors. I mean, it didn't occur to me to connect those 2 things. So there's 3 dimensions, and there just happens to be 3 primary colors. Coincidence? Maybe not. All right, so that one I'm going to really have to think about. All right, so anyway, so this analogy might work very well, this metaphor of using the primary color. So we could use, blue, red, yellow, or something, right? Or green, whatever ones you want to use. I think you need yellow just to make it realistic that somehow you're going to make white out of this slop. Yeah, so the idea of those is the 3 dimensions, and then understanding what the electron's doing. So when the electron's being fired by the gun, it's going from white, and then it's accelerated to a velocity. And through that acceleration, it goes from white to, let's say, blue. Because blue is the forward dimension. And what is it expelling when it's doing that? So how does it acquire? So it's consuming blue from the environment somehow. And exchanging what it has, which is yellow and red. So it's eating blue out of the environment somehow. I mean, that's the graviton bit. And it's eating the blue gravitons, and it's expelling the yellow and the red. So that's really all that's happened. There's no extra bits flying. It's just exchanging labels. So something comes in labeled red and it leaves labeled blue, basically. So a blue comes in to the side of the electron, let's say. It has to be coming into its perpendicular element. So a blue comes in, it keeps the blue, and it, well, a blue comes in the sense that, in a sense, the blue's going this way. So the blue, it has to collect this way. So it takes in the blue and it gives back a yellow or a red in exchange. And then when it's decelerated, so it flies across the target, and what it's being is, as it's flying, it's being influenced. It's going to be diffracted by fields. Now, I saw Feynman's, I've been watching the Auckland series of lectures, and it's kind of funny. It's called fits of reflection and refraction or something like that, light. And I'd watched them before, and there was the first 3 I thought were really quite useful, and then the last 3 were just especially when you started going on the all the new particle stuff. I think he does that at the end of the lecture. He goes into all the gluons, gluons, duons, gluons, suons, and just who cares? I mean, not very coherent to wrapping up a package, a vision. of what's going on. And there was this, yeah, and so like the fourth lecture is the beginning of that incoherence when he starts talking about electrons, and he just keeps talking about how simple everything is, and then keeps talking about how, well, I didn't tell you this, and I didn't tell you that, and I didn't, you know, and I would have the same problem as I'm saying, oh, look, it's a kinetic interaction, and technically the only thing exchanged in the kinetic interaction is polarization. So yes, that technically it's true that nothing changes its real movement. It's just that the polarization is moving in a new direction. I know, it sounds crazy, but that's what's happening. So I can understand some of the difficulty in explaining stuff that gets a little bit nuanced, because you want to just say it bangs into it and it reflects, but obviously you can't say that because it doesn't just bang into it and reflect. All right. And so Feynman was getting into dealing with those kind of realities where he was admitting that his simplistic drawings were not, they were just a little bit too simplistic because nothing really reflects. It has to get absorbed by the electron moves, and then it's readmitted from a different position, slightly or substantially. And it can, in that case, be diffracted. If the electron has substantially moved before it readmits the photon will obviously appear as if it's coming from someplace else. Is the electron moved? So it's a way of capturing something that comes in, and then you move, and then you release it over here. So you released it the right angle, but you're in a new position. So the new position makes the angle seem different, obviously. All right. So in that lecture, he starts talking about having two charged plates and an electron going through the charged plates, and how there are these low energy photons. And so when he started doing that, I think that's what they're talking about, the virtual photons. And he basically called them the field. But he was basically talking like they are, you know, like radio waves, and that but somehow they're of so little low energy that physics doesn't have to account for them. But yet he's arguing that there's a lot of them. So those two things don't make much sense, but I think that's the quandary of their physics, is that it doesn't make any sense. It's enough photons to move electrons, yet somehow you don't have to account for the energy because they can't account for it. They can't account for where did the energy come from. Where, you know, you have to have energy in to produce these photons, and obviously the energy in the electromagnetic radiation is a supplement to the real work the electrons are doing in the moving charge. So so they have an energy conservation problem. That's why they can't talk about these photons like they're real photons. But you can really see him doing that, because he actually called them photons. He actually called them low energy photons, which essentially he says of a longer wavelength, like 1.5 feet, which is like a radio wave. High frequency radio wave, and but certainly many times, so the lower energy just has to do with the fact that a nanometer compared to this is a million times bigger than a nanometer. So if you had two beams of light, one at the frequency of red light and one at this length, you're talking about photons that come a million times more often, which is it's like having a bag of 1,000,000 marbles and then one marble. And so, yes, the one marble seems like very few marbles, but obviously it's enough marbles to be interfering with the electrons. So it's not that small an amount of an electron. So anyway, so it seems clear that he didn't want to mess with that, because I think he does have the conservation problem. So they do have to strictly make these virtual photons, because they can't account for them in the energy exchange dynamics. All right. So link below if anybody's around. 4 people. I probably should have announced this one. I was pretty sure I was going to do it, and I said, I didn't feel like making a video, and I didn't do it. So kind of laziness on my part. Anyway, all right, so now we're halfway. So the tube has initiated the electron. The electron's flying through now a magnetic field created by the television that's now going to bend that stream of electrons. And it's going to do it quite reliably with these photons, which Feynman mentions. And these photons are essentially the force that is magnetism. That's what it is. A big electromagnet is around the TV tube, and that's going to deflect the beam of electrons because the electrons are affected by magnetism, magnetic fields. And so you can, by pushing this beam of a polarized field at the beam, the sequence of photons, you will eventually cause a little subtle angle changes, and those subtle angle changes will lead to a direction eventually. They'll leave the field traveling at a different vector. So it will be bent by these interactions in its motion. And so what we're really talking about is an electron, though. It's not a particle like a photon. So it's not moving as fast as a photon. It's moving fast, but not nearly as fast as a photon. It has acceleration because that's what you gave it to get it across these plates. And you also need them to go pretty fast because you have to keep refreshing this screen by running across all these dots very accurately. Very accurately. So anyway, this deflection is very precise. Caused because you can just put in a certain amount of energy and you will get the deflection commensurate deflection. So so the way to see that is you have to recognize, keep recognizing that the electron is not a particle, it's a swirling bit. It has its own it's a school of fish. And so if I want to move the school of fish, I just throw fish at it. So if I need it to go more in the blue direction, I just throw more blue fish at it. I need to go in the red direction, I throw more red fish at it. So I just create an imbalance in the polarized field, and it will end up absorbing those extra and emitting anything that's not that. So the field inside the tube, the electron stream is creating, the reciprocal give back is it gives back exactly what it gets. So whatever it absorbs, it releases in the other two dimensions. So somewhere in the other two dimensions, there's the opposite direction of excess polarization in that direction. So there's more yellow or more red if it's going blue, because blue has changed. It's gone from blue being this to blue is now this. And so the new red is this way, not that way. And the new yellow is, so it's always going to be, unfortunately, the geometry is whatever your forward is, the other two become left, right, up, and down. They don't have there's no, it's like a gyroscope. The orientation is subject to the total field environment, and so it can move. All right, so yeah, so and then what's the next step in this process? Now that you've moved, you've given the school more fish going in some other direction, which will always be converted into a total net condition. So anytime you're given fish in one direction, it's always going to be mathematically converted into a new vector, and that's your new forward. That's the total balance of the fish inside of you. So it's always got to be recognized that this is a summation. There's not just blue, there's all the shades of blue. There's not just red, there's all the shades of red. And those are all added up to create something that in the end will always be, it'll always average into blue, and blue will be whatever the average will take care of the reorientation of all the other dimensions. I don't know how exactly to explain that part. I mean, to articulate it in better words. That you don't hold two velocities. You really just hold one in the end. It's always your net velocity. It's always the net number of fish, and that just defines the new forward. But you're not all the time, you're really going, the fish are always going in more than one direction, right? The school of fish is swirling. And so there's lots of bits moving in all kinds of directions. At any one moment, there's fish going this way, and there's fish going the opposite way. There's all fish going all kinds of ways at any one moment. But over time, it's all, in a sense, averaged out to a direction and a division by the number of fish into a speed that's just based on how many of the fish by volume are going in the right direction. The one that now is the direction you're going. Oh, it's the average direction you're going. So anyway, these are all time equations, so they end up being averages, is I guess all I'm trying to say. So you're averaging it over moments. And because to deal with the single moments is really difficult because it's the speed of light. And there's a lot of moments in even the movement of an electron from the cathode ray tube to the target. You would need 1 billion moments if you tried to calculate it moment to moment. And so that would be silly. It would be too complex. So you have to just average it. I'm not saying it's not worth attempting, okay, to do it moment to moment. But that's, I guess, that would be a different subject about just trying to isolate the one tiny bit of change, the change as it is imposed on the thing over time. All right. So the magnetic field accomplishes its task. It's by a precise amount. We shoot a precise amount of electricity and create a precise amount of magnetic imbalance in the field, and that will deflect the beam that's always trying to go straight. All right, so the electron beam is being shot between two plates, and there's a straight line that's the shortest distance. And we're basically stopping it from doing that shortest distance thing, and we're basically forcing it to do the bigger distance thing of the angular thing to get to the target. So it's a longer distance to get to the same target here. So it's not doing the shortest distance to the charge because we are deflecting it from that path by a precise amount created by exactly how much magnetism you create in these dimensional fields. All right. And so it hits this little piece of phosphorus on the target, but that's the part I really wanted to get to, because that was the part I never really thought about. So if you think about this as a momentum thing, you can realize that the little electron has an energy, an energy vector arrow of imbalance. So it's got an imbalance in a direction. And then when it hits the target, okay, when it hits the phosphorus, it's got to lose that big arrow because it's going to stay here, so to speak. It's not going through the phosphorus. So all of this extra fish it has going this way have to be released. And that's what you see leave, is all the little photons. So the little photons fly out at the proper polarization through the proper filter. And so you've converted the momentum of the electron, the extra fish in the school, and you've converted them into free fish in the form of visible light emanating from the phosphorus, through a filter. So the phosphorus creates this white light, and the white light is converted into red, blue, or green to create the appropriate color on the screen. For a color TV, that means you're hitting a color filter. You're hitting the phosphorus at a location where it has a different color filter on it. So the target is even more specific and more complicated. but the pixels do end up bigger. So I mean, you could even see that in like old TVs. When I went to color TV, the pixels did get a little bigger. The separation between dots. Anyway, in the early days, anyway. It just, you know, I just had never really thought of that. What you're really seeing there is just the obvious directionality of it, its direction. So direction is imposed here, velocity, and the velocity is realized through the equation. You just can't escape what's happening. The velocity is what's being converted. So it's just converting velocity in the sense that this polarization, or whatever you want to call it, this identity of a recognizable movement is being converted through the process. But it's, you know, it's just kind of the obviousness of the thing hitting, and there's this, it's like if I throw a steel ball at a brick wall, I don't get the same obvious satisfaction of seeing, okay, that momentum of the steel ball, that extra energy actually going forward. You just don't get to see it because it is dissipated as heat and fracturing of the structure of the wall you're hitting. So the wall moves, and that deceives you because you don't see the movement, because it's spread out over the entire structure. The vibrations and all that kind of stuff dissipate the energy, so you really don't get to see it as clearly as you see the light flying off of the screen. It's not as obvious, but it's exactly the same thing. There's forward stuff moving because it has an imbalance, and that imbalance will conserve. It will continue on its path until it's converted into something you can't see. Essentially, gravity. Back into quanta that are you can't see. So not easily detected. And then you'll say it's been converted into something else, but it really hasn't. Let's see how else to put this. It really did go its way. The only thing that held it up was conversions of the polarization, and that's where you get into this. To regain the fish going the opposite way, you have to do the same conversion process. Strange. Why did that jump in front of that window? I don't know. Must be a Google thing of some kind. Anyway, yeah, still no comments, but you know, life. Yeah, so that's primarily what I want to talk about. But so I still haven't. I have to document this polarization part because it's going to keep being. It's not a hanging point, but I mean it does confuse the kinetic argument, because you're really, the kinetics is invisible. Again, I mean, I go back to this two steel balls hitting each other, and the fact that the universe, you can't, theoretically, right? If you don't know the mechanics of it, it's nothing changes. The two things just go through each other like it didn't happen. In a sense, the same outcome it's exactly the same outcome. There's a thing going that way and a thing going that way, and it's as if they never hit each other in perfect frictionless kinetics. And so there wouldn't be anything to see. Okay, there wouldn't be any matter in the universe if it was perfectly kinetic. So what has to be added is this idea that when these two things go in, what happens is that the polarization, this one was polarized blue and this one was polarized red, or however you want to analogize polarization. This one was up and this one was down. This one was spin in clockwise. This was spin out counterclockwise. However you want to describe it. The property, that property reverses. So if the interaction never happened, then polarization A would go straight through and polarization B would continue on its trip. But what's really happening is polarization B is going that way. So they've exchanged their polarization. And that is what makes that's what makes it possible for there to be collections of polarization and filtering of polarization. And that's essentially what matter is. It's just a filtering of positions, orientations, polarization in a geometric construct. It's a filtering is a good word. But yeah, so that's a whole, I mean, it's the kind of thing where you probably need a computer to simulate some of this stuff, I think. I'm not sure. You know, just to run through the possible arrangements of interactions, polarized interactions, and how they would, how they would manifest in terms of, that's the word I'm looking for. Yeah, well, I mean, I keep saying collecting, and you're not really, it's filtering. And so it's just a filter. So I have to explain how the possibility of that exchanging polarization. I guess the obvious way to say it would be, if I was going to collect something, I would need some way to trap it. And so in a sense, you can sort of understand that if polarization is always getting reversed through every interaction, that when you had interactions, you could end up with this idea of something just bouncing back and forth and back and forth. And so in a sense, it's trapped. The polarization is trapped by the density of what it's interacting with. And so if the polarization is always, if the polarization doesn't survive the kinetic reaction that it always reflects, or always when the certain rules are obeyed, it ends up reflecting, then you can see how it could get trapped, because it's going to constantly keep reflecting off every interaction, or every interaction that fits the criteria. So there could be, you know, it could go 5 seconds without having the specific kind of reverse interaction, and then it could go 1 second, then go a millisecond. But the point is, you could see how it would pachinko, how it would end up, the polarization would end up not going straight, going in some other direction. And the whole point is that direction ends up being the orbits that we see in the galaxies and we imagine to exist in the atomic bits. We should say saying hello from Brazil. Yes. Me saying hello from Brazil would be stupid because I'm not in Brazil. So that's not really great English, but it's close enough. I don't even know if that's how you spell Tarzan, but close enough, maybe, probably. Yeah, more like Tarman. But anyway, it's okay. I was, yeah. I've been called that before. It might be to your surprise, but yes, I have heard that joke. Yeah, no, I do. I make it more clear to myself also, which is really quite pleasant. It's really quite nice to actually understand physics by making it physical. Yeah, instead of magical. Oh, it's so much better if you just make it physical. Physical, yeah, it just kind of works. I don't know why physics gave up on the physical thing, but yes, physical physics makes sense. So, so anyway, so yeah, I think I like I said, that was the thing on my mind mainly, was just this idea of trying to explain this really subtle relationship, a very profoundly important relationship between photons and electrons, and that the photons are, in essence, the virtual photons that they talk about are the field carriers. They're not the force carriers. They are the force. It's that simple. And oh, gee, you think so, Vincent? Let's see what Vincent looks like. I mean, I can't really see him. What? You're like an avocado? Oh, you're just some punk. But guess what? You're ugly. Yeah, you ugly. You retard. So anyway, you're too young for this room. Go twaddle off and wet your pants somewhere else. Thank you very much. Stupid little twat. Anyway, Jesus. Retards just keep having kids. I don't know why we let people do that. It's just gotta stop. If people don't understand physics, they don't understand biology. You don't make little rotten retards. That's really stupid. Don't make stupid things. If you can't make a smart one, don't make any at all. That should be the rule. It's just sensible, right? First, do no fucktard. So first, don't make a fucktard. If you think you might make a fucktard, don't make it. Gotta sew up a lot of vaginas on this planet. Because they really are just zombie vaginas. They're just going to create zombies. Anyway, separate subject. So, where was I? Oh yeah, so this relationship between photons and electrons. And so, you can just hear, like I said, Feynman, even back in the 80s. I mean, this virtual photon thing was just such a concession that, yeah, we've got this wrong. This isn't about bending space. This isn't about relativistic time perverting space or any of this shit. It's about real fucking forces. It's about real things crashing into real things and causing real effects. And that's what physics is. There is no dimensional space perversions. You have to pervert something by fucking crashing a fish into it. No fish, no physics. So the fish are everywhere. That's gravity is the fish. And what we're really saying is when you see a photon, it's really just a fish that comes at a frequency. So fish is here, and then there's another fish right there, and there's another fish behind it, and they're all the same color. They're all the same polarization. And that's a photon, a stream of fish in sequence at specific distance. And those are created by electrons, because electrons are technically kind of spinny things. And spinny things spin off their top, so to speak. So if you were to just take the stuff that spins off the top, you can kind of see that depending on how fast it's spinning, it's just going to release everything at the same distance because it's spinning at consistent speed. So that's kind of obvious. And so the next thing is the magnetism thing. So what's that? That's this field, this EMF, electromagnetic fields or force. This force, the one that's released perpendicular to the momentum of a charged particle, an electron, this force, okay, again, just a bunch of fish. And the only thing about these fish that make them significant isn't that they have a frequency, it's just that they're all the same polarization. They all have the same orientation in space. And so if there's something sensitive to their orientation, they're going to beat the hell out of it. And if there's something not, so say if you're a jail bar, say if you're a piece of matter and you essentially have jail bars in front of you, electrons, but let's just say they're jail bars, and they have a specific orientation, and you're coming in this way against the jail bars, well, you're going to hit the jail bars, aren't you? Yeah, but if you come in this way, you'll go through the bars. And that's all it's about. You'll either hits something, it'll acquire your velocity, your velocity. So the fish goes into the school. Now the school has extra velocity going the direction of that fish, and the school of fish will move. It'll move slower than the original fish, but it will move until it releases a fish going forward. And then it won't move anymore because now it's minus a fish going forward. Get it? And it's just that simple. And obviously that doesn't have anything to do with quantum electrodynamics and probability waves and multiverses and Copenhagen and Husenfest and Hassenboss and Wickety Wackety, or any of this other crap, this Heisenberg uncertainty principle, they call it, which is just crap. I mean, the field energy inside a cathode ray tube, there's nothing about those photons, as Feynman called them, virtual photons, but photons, force carriers. There's nothing about the force carriers inside a cathode ray tube that have anything to do with any Heisenberg shit. Or else there wouldn't be any ability to so exactly misdirect the beam of electrons. You couldn't make the beam of electrons hit the exact pixel on the screen. If it wasn't for the fact that there's no uncertainty about where that fucker is. And there's no uncertainty about you hitting that electron beam. So it's all crap. It's just, they got it all wrong. They got, every chance they had to get it right. They just took the wrong road down, the silly pike. All right. So anything else? I figure I'll do an hour minimum, so another 15 minutes or so, and then I can give up if there's no chit chat or no guests or no anything, which it appears there will be. So far, so bad, but yeah. And I don't know if I have a whole bunch else I wanted to talk about. It's like I said, it's very good to talk about just because it does give you a clue to things. I mean, this color thing is interesting. Like I said, the 3 primary colors goes so well with the 3 dimensions that I probably should be able to find a way to dimensionalize that concept. But it is interesting. So color is manifested through the frequency of light, which is really undigital, right? It doesn't really have, it's an analog thing. It's a scale from, whatever, 400 to 800 nanometers. So you got red at 400, you got yellow at 6, and or green, and then you got let's say blue at 800. So that's what I'll have to play with, is that, okay, there's a proportional jump, so that's understandable. They're all, say, 200 nanometers apart, which is correct on average. But why would the and the significance would be in terms of the speed of the electron, or the speed of its spin. So the only 2 factors you have are speed of spin or size, which would be circumference, something like that. So those are 2 ways you could manifest a frequency, is to increase the size of the thing spinning, which would make the thing it would take longer to get around the circle, so to speak. Take longer to get around the circle. Yeah, that's why you have to think of these things in terms of like hurricanes, because hurricanes are like that. You know, the wind's really strong near the center, and then it gets slower and slower and slower as you go further out. So you can't think of it like a solid wheel. You have to think about it as a graduated, associated spin. So I have to come up with some way to metaphor that. Well, I think that's a good enough metaphor. I just have to do it with the idea of the spiral where it's slower on the outside, and faster in the center. Okay. In terms of the spin, and that would give you your different frequencies. So if a photon, graviton, polarized bit of quanta left from the center, it would go at a high energy frequency. And if it left from the periphery, it would go at a low energy frequency, or color. Okay, so that sort of makes sense. So again, but why 3 colors? So, I mean, you know, it's just that, you know, this just might be a coincidental relationship between the fact that there's 3 dimensions and there's 3 primary colors. But it still seems like there should be some way to connect the 3 dimensions to the 3 colors. So that's what I'll try to do. But it's hard to imagine how that could be in the idea of a graduated speed, because like I said, it's a linear thing. I mean, there's no obvious, it seems arbitrary. The borderlines between these frequencies seems quite arbitrary. There's nothing distinctly different. The photons are the same. The polarization, maybe or maybe not. So that's the question. Is the polarization, the orientation of native red light, somehow different than native yellow or native blue? I don't think so. Really, it's just a frequency phenomenon, so I really can't. Yeah, so that's going to take some work. So it could just be a coincidence. WCDENs. Yeah, so there's 3 dimensions and 3 primary colors, but that does not equal correlation. All right, but it seems intuitive to think there might be. So I'm just saying you really do have to pick at it until you make sure you've picked at it hard enough to say I'll give up. So I've spent 7 minutes on it now. So yeah, I probably have to spend more than 7 minutes thinking about it to see if I can find a correlation that's more substantive. It likely has something to do with the exact structure of the electron, in the sense that maybe it is dimensionalized. So it's, okay, that might work. So the part of the electron itself has, like a gyroscope, it sort of has a structure, a framework. The thing can't spin in isolation. And so let's say that its spinning bits are in the 3 dimensions. So it has an element spinning in each dimension, you know, perpendicular to each other. So you could say like a galaxy, a flat thing, and then you take another galaxy in the other 2 dimensions. So it would be a galaxy this way, a galaxy this way. All right, a galaxy, how do you do that with flat? How do you draw it with flat things? So there's a flat thing, there's a flat thing, and you're doing that forward flat thing is the tricky one, right? Okay, so it's it's like this, this, and this. Okay. All right. So that might be it. That one part of the electron, so the inside part maybe is spinning fast, is small in circumference. Then you have the bigger piece that's bigger in circumference and it's slower. And then the other one in the third dimension that's spinning even slower. Yeah, so that might work. So if you break the electron into pieces that exist in the 3 dimensions. So electron has components in the 3 dimensions. Makes sense because it has to have movement that can be variable. So it would be acquiring more internal bits would make it go faster in this dimension. More bits in the other range would make it go faster in another direction. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And it can constantly, like a gyroscope, it can always just change which dimension those wheels are turning in. So its big wheel could be turning in the blue dimension, or the big wheel could be turning in the red dimension. So it just changes what direction. When it changes direction, it's just changing the dimension of its dominant component, and its polarization is dictated essentially by the orientation of what part of it is orientated, what part of it is imbalanced, the blue part, the red part, or the yellow part. And now that could be interesting. I think I'm onto something there. All right, so the electron is more complicated than just a hurricane. It has a swirl, a big hurricane swirl, and then it has a swirl going around the top of that. Boy, that's just always so hard. And then the swirl going this way. Okay, so yeah, so it's getting that left-right one. Boy, I mean, left, right, forward, back, up, down. Yeah, so it's the up, down, forward, back ones. It's always hard to draw that third dimension. Even in your brain, it's hard to draw it. Unless you make a sphere. It's much easier if you make a sphere, I think. Even when you make a sphere, it's still, my brain still just wants to do this and this. And it's saying, where the hell's the other dimension? I mean, I got this. And I got this. I mean, I'm still doing like the equator thing. I'm still doing like the Earth thing where you just go longitude, latitude. And it's just like you can't do that fat part. It just doesn't, the fat part looks like the left-right part. It's just funny. Somehow they end up superimposed on each other. I mean, 2 of the dimensions always seem to blend into each other when you try to imagine them. At least that's a problem I'm having. I'm just saying, all right, sphere. You got this way. You got this way. What? I can't find the other dimensions. It's so funny. My brain will not find it. You got this way. Okay, there it is. So it's this way, and this way. Yeah, there's always one that's off axis. So that's it. 2 of them are similar. One of them is always odd. So that's it. 2 of them are going in the same way in a sense, and then there's that one that's doing this, where you have to move your hand into a different way. So 2 of them are doing something easy to duplicate, and the third one is doing this change your position. Yeah, something like that. Or maybe it's just my intuitive sense. It's just not, just doesn't like doing it. I mean, it doesn't do it well. It doesn't three-dimensionalize. It doesn't distinguish between the dimensions very well. I mean, it obviously sees them. It just can't distinguish them. Can't separate them easily, intuitively. So, all right, well, made my minimum hour, so we'll see if there's anything else I got to say. But this was valuable. More stuff to work with. So, yeah, this is a good video just as a standalone product. No help from the peanut gallery. It's, you know, people really are useful. They're just irritants, really. You just, no help, just irritating, just distractions. It's quite amazing that I have to just take the ingredients I've collected through a lifetime and just mix them together and come up with the answer. And just don't expect even a glass of water from you people. I mean, if it isn't on my shelf already, it's not going to be in the cake. Yeah, apparently. People suck. Useless, stupid fucks. Yeah. This just verifies it. See, I have to do everything. I have to figure out why there's three colors, three primary colors. Yeah, I really think there's a dimensional component to electrons that are a representation of those colors. I think that's probably true. And it only creates blue, yellow, and red. And it's just a mixture of those things that we see as different colors. Suppose it'd be interesting is to create a laser. I guess it would just be superimposing a mixture of different streams of light. So that would be the interesting thing. Like, can you create a pure stream of light at 700 nanometers, let's say? You know, something blue, yellow, or say 500 nanometers, something red, yellow, an orange light. That was like a pure thing in the sense that it wasn't a mixture of two, or red and a yellow component of stuff moving at a higher frequency and stuff moving at the slower frequency. So that's another question. Is there any such thing as a pure? I don't think there can be, but just from the way they talk about it. So electrons don't produce streams of photons. At what do we call them? Off frequency. So it's either 400 or whatever the number would be for pure red, 600 or 800. If we use the number, those are just my generalization numbers. I don't know if they're exactly right. Or is it the other way around, right? It's nanometers. So, you know, the red's the 800. Yeah, so I had it backwards. Red is the 800 and blue is the 400. Sorry. And shit like that happens, you know. It's just so much to keep track of. You know. So, yeah, so I'm going by the size of the wavelength, not the So I always think in terms of the frequency, and the frequency is obviously longer. So you think of a bigger number. Well, that's the same thing as what I just said there. So that's not my excuse. Well, you think of more of them. That's it. So yeah, I think of more traveling across a space with the higher intensity. So I think the number should be bigger, right? So the blue number should be bigger, but it should be like 800. It should be a big number. And it's like the frequency is inverted to the intensity. I mean, the size, the nanometer number. You want the smaller number means bigger intensity, more of it. So you don't think of a smaller bag holding more stuff. I mean, it just doesn't make sense. So that's the problem there. Well, I already did today's subject, so I'm not going to redo it, but I was talking about photons and electrons and the fact that Feynman uses the word virtual photon or photon when he's describing electrons and photons, and he describes the two charged plates, and he actually talks about the photons interfering with the electrons, and technically those aren't real photons because he can't account for where the energy came from, so he doesn't call them real photons. They call them virtual photons, but he's conceding their existence, which is the funny part, because he's basically conceding the existence of an actual field, not bent space, not bent time, but an actual particle hitting the electrons. The electrons absorb them, and then they readmit them. And that's how the electrons are moved in their position, is that they momentarily acquire the velocity of the photons, and then they release that velocity, and they have a new velocity because they have a new vector. Their direction has been changed, so to speak, of their filtered polarization. Then I got into the whole polarization thing, which led me to the conclusion that, hey, guess what? There's a similarity between the 3 dimensions and the 3 primary colors. It's the number 3, right? They have the number 3 in common. That might mean something. And the number 3 was actually a childhood theory of mine. I actually have old notes somewhere. I have to find those old notes because I have 3. I have pages and pages of stuff trying to demonstrate that 3 is the core number of the universe. And it's just kind of funny. I never did it by citing the fact that there's 3 dimensions. I just never thought of dimensions being relevant to anything. So it's kind of funny. So I was doing it through all these other, all the other things that come in 3s. All the, like I said, the one that was obvious to me was sun, earth, moon, that kind of stuff. There just seemed like 3 was a very recurring pattern. But obviously 3 is a small number, so there should be a lot of 3s in the universe, right? Flies. I don't know how they got in this house. But there is a ton of them. I don't know how I could have missed him. Pour my coffee? No. Fucker. You don't need to be here. You got a short enough lifespan. Let me just humanely get you done with it already. Flies. Oh, such a silly redundancy. Anyway, okay, so the question. Here we go. If the density of the field is sufficient to keep the electron to keep the electron's form, then how can the light from distant stars not have its frequency completely interrupted from the field? Well, that's the catch, right? Is that the electron is a school. Again, so fish can affect the school. All right, a school of fish can be affected by a fish, but the fish can never affect fish. So the fish can never bend another fish. They can only exchange polarization. So again, we're back to that kinetic argument, right? That steel balls hitting each other, it's like it never happens. You can't tell the difference between them hitting and them not hitting. The universe stays exactly the same in both cases. So they're exchanging, but what they're doing is reversing their polarization. Oh, I got that one. Yeah. Where are they coming from? Must be some, I don't know, one of those people I killed must be rotting in under my kitchen floor. have to go find that body and you know, put some slime on it or something. Anyway, it's always, you know, it's always something. I mean, you can't, you think you killed somebody, you think it's over and done with, but now you got to worry about their decomposing body. Anyway, so a photon isn't the school. A photon is the fish, and the fish can't change the fish. They can only exchange polarization. So all you can do is change the polarization of the light, but you can't change the light. And the frequency part is the key element, right? Because the frequency you can never get rid of, in a sense, you know, until you fuck with the polarization. So I guess I would argue that the polarization, you only change the polarization when the interaction happens inside an electron. And you're not really changing the polarization, you're changing when you release the polarization. So again, you're just kind of holding the polarization and then releasing it at a later time. So you changed its release date, but you didn't change anything else. That's one way to say it, but it's not quite the way I want to say it. All right, so it's not quite good enough. But the key answer is electrons are schools and photons are fish. So that's the first answer. And the second answer is the frequency component is the thing that makes light light. And you really can't kill the frequency component. So even if it gets depolarized or its polarization is altered, the frequency is still there, which means that part of it will still be detectable, I would imagine. So I guess that's what I'm saying, is you can't get rid of the frequency element. See, even if you changed all the polarization, it's built into the code. You know, because we're basically saying there could be a stream of photons, and the only ones that are relevant are the ones that are polarized X. So if I make a stream of random dots moving in a direction, what we're calling light is the fact that dots of a specific distance from each other. I should have done this with more, you know, extra little bits in here randomly. But the part that's important is that mouse. Come on, mouse, you can do it. A really nice mouse, but it just didn't quite work right. Yeah. All right. So there's actually quanta in between. Okay, the thing we're calling a photon. So it's a stream of rocks, but the only rocks that matter are like blue rocks or whatever you want to say. Okay, ones with the right polarization, and they have to be at exactly the right distance from each other to be meaningful. And the only way that can be changed, that pattern, is in an electron. You know, it has to go into that mechanism and get broken, you know, where this frequency is destroyed. But you can't do it by just interactions, because those interactions, although you might replace this polarization, you're not going to replace the distance. Well, see, that's true too, though. You know, there's more to it. So you can't change the polarization of the light. All right, so there are experiments where, yeah, see, but that's always a medium. Okay, so that's the answer. Okay, so there's the what the hell's it called? The famous guy about light experiments, Faraday, the Faraday effect, I think it is. All right, so where you have a medium, so you have some kind of substance, and then you shoot light through it. Draw it on. Oh, I don't want to wreck that. My too slit drawing, don't want to make a mess out of that. So you shoot light through it, and you're in a magnetic field, and the light will change its polarization. Okay, so you put light of a certain polarization in the medium, the oil, or some other medium, and you have this electric field around it. You will change this light coming out will be of a slightly different polarization. So you'll bend its dimensional orientation, so to speak. But clearly, okay, that's the medium's doing it. So that all you're really doing is the magnetism is affecting the electrons. And now the electron's position is moving. And now when the light goes through the electrons, its angular polarization is altered as it's coming out of the electrons because the electrons are being twisted. So you're twisting the electrons, which is twisting the polarization of the photons as they go through the electrons. So again, it's an interaction dependent on photons interacting with electrons. So photons can only exchange polarization or any attribute by interacting with a school. So the fish can't affect fish in isolation. They can only be affected by entering a school and exiting a school. It's only right. I can't say it simpler than that, I don't think. The only place that the physics happens is in the electron, or probably the proton and neutron have something to do with this too, but mainly it's an electron function. Let's just say the electron is the real player. Yeah. Would be interesting to have a bag of neutrons just to see what they would do. You know, and protons, even a bag of protons, and see if you could just make the bag of protons do something interesting interactively. But they're a lot harder to scrape together than electrons. Electrons are more survivable in a free field, I guess is the way to say that. Okay. Well, it's either okay or it's not okay, but I mean, either get what I'm saying or you don't get what I'm saying. I'm just saying that a photon in kinetic interactions, like I said, it's like the X drawing. Okay, do the two things bounce off of each other, or do the two things go through each other? And the point is both of those worlds are identical. So in pure kinetics, everything gets kind of invisible, and it's only the polarization that makes it relevant. So I'm just saying that if you just think of the fish as not being able to exchange polarization without being inside of a school. So the only place they can hit each other in a way where they are at the right angles to exchange polarization is in an electron. So it's kind of like saying you have to be in like you have to go into like a solar system to crash into another planet or something like that. The two planets can never hit each other in real space, and they can only hit each other when they go into a solar system or something like that. It's just a rule. There's a reason for the rule, okay? So I'd say there's physics behind that reasoning, but there's a reason that what happens inside the school is different than what happens in the real world. So whether it's an angle that only gets created inside of an electron, or whether it's a speed, or whether it's something that only happens inside of the electron that makes it possible for fish to exchange polarization. They're not really exchanging it again, so let me just be clear that what's really happening is the two things are coming into each other, and instead of looking like they went through each other, they're going to, like this one went through this one, they're going to look like they bounced off of each other, because polarization A is going to go from going this way to going this way. And polarization B is going to do the same thing. It's going to reflect. So instead of doing the universe isn't the same. So if the polarization reflects, then the outcome isn't the same as what it was before. So you will be able to tell the two things hit each other because the polarization has reversed, or it's exchanged. So the fact of an impact becomes obvious. where you can't see the impact. If they don't exchange polarization, then the impact is invisible. Oh, again, you're just ragging again. Just fuck off. You're not making an argument. You don't have a degree. So, Newton didn't have a degree, idiot. you know, you are not putting your reputation and livelihood on the line. Well, I've offered $5,000 to any physicist of any kind of merit. So if you have let's say you have a physics channel on YouTube even that gets, say, 50,000 subscribers, I'll give you $5,000 to critique my theory. So so any physicist that has any kind of, if you're published in a magazine and you're a physicist, you have any kind of public impact, $5,000 to make a critique. So fuck you. I'll make it 10 for some really big name. Michai Cuckoo, crazy fuck. Yeah, I'll pay you $10,000, pussy shit. I'll pay Neil deGrasse Tyson $10,000 to put his reputation on the line, making a counter argument. I don't believe a word of what you're saying. Well, I don't care what you believe. I've just said it publicly, jackass. So I guess my balls are on the line, aren't they? Anybody could take me up on what I've just said within the stipulations that I just made, couldn't they, fuckface? Yeah, that's right. Unlike a weasel that you are, hiding behind fucking anonymous coward rock, I'm right here, shithead. My phone number's online, jackass. I believe PhD academics with something to lose. Again, my reputation's no less important to me than I'm sure their reputation is to them. And the point is, either they have an argument or they don't. I think I have an argument. I would be willing to be executed if I'm wrong. So if you want me to sign a piece of paper that I think there should be a presidential directive that I am executed, that I'm shot in the fucking head by the US government if I'm proven to be outrageously incorrect. I mean, incorrect in some kind of way where I was deceiving people or lying or, in any way, like I couldn't pass a polygraph test. Yeah, any deception, any distortion, any evidence of even distortion, willful and deliberate distortion of any fact or any principle by me, I should be executed or tortured. All right, I'm willing to be tortured. All right, I'm making the public statement. You can torture me if you can find where I've done anything to hide the truth or to be deceptive in what I'm expressing or explaining. Unlike your physicist, unlike your PhDs who can't even accurately describe the two-slit experiment, I'm not a lying shit like you and your friends. All right. I think you're on to something, Gary. Yes, well, I know that. Don't do believe. Don't do believe. I don't know. Do understand. Appeal to authority. Well, whatever. Yes, we know it's an appeal. It's worse than an appeal to authority, right? It's an appeal to authority with a slanderous attack, as if I haven't been fully invested, and as if I haven't done everything to just request a fair argument, a fair trial. All I want is a fair trial. Is that so much to ask for? That's why I'm in this room right now. It's a request for a fair trial. Because I can prove my fucking case, cunt, to somebody who's rational, unlike you. You're an ill-informed sycophant, okay? You're like a Pope follower. Whatever the Pope says, you believe. Well, that's your problem. That's a fallacy, and it is evidence of your logical incompetence. And yet you've taken the name logical empiricist as if you have something to do with logic, and you have nothing to do with logic. Your arguments are fallacious. Yeah. Anyway. my major would have been in college. Okay, I mean, I did get accepted. I actually could have gone to MIT, but I was going to LSU. And yes, I was taking physics and chemistry and biology. Yes, that's all I was taking. No other, I didn't want anything else. I wasn't going to bother with anything else. It was all engineering classes. I mean, I wanted to leave my door open. There was two places I was thinking of going, you know, architecture or, you know, research science. But the one I should have thought of was lawyer, because frankly, I'm really good at that too. I'm really good at arguing. But anyway, but you know, the idiotic thing was, I remember doing this whole college thing, and I'm saying I'm paying. I was paying out of my pocket, right? It was like $10,000 a year back then, and not a small amount of money for somebody who had to earn all this shit doing delivering newspapers for 5 cents a paper. But anyway, and you know, I remember they had this stupid physical education requirement. I'm like, I have to pay them to waste my time bouncing balls around or something? I mean, I was like amazed. I'm paying for college and they're telling me I have to do this and I have to do that. I mean, fuck you, cunts. I'm paying you to provide me the shit I want, not the shit I don't want. I mean, I just couldn't believe the control freakery that was built into this shit. And this was supposed to be like higher education. And I was like, if you're going to treat me like I'm in nursery school, I'm not paying you for that. You know, fuck you. I mean, I was really pissed off. But anyway, the point is, I had a neurotic disorder. And so, yes, my life was thoroughly suspended, put on hold forever in terms of being anything fun. Yeah. So, you know, I just spent the next 40 years going insane. And then climbing back again just to argue with fucking assholes. Shit. Should have stayed crazy. So before the pointless distraction with the, again, more attacks on my right to make an argument, not the argument itself. I don't have a right to make an argument. Oh, yeah, it's just such bullshit. Yeah, so the theme of this video was the whole interaction between photons and electrons, and the fact that they, like I said, you can see the concessions they made. Like I said, even Feynman in the 80s was kind of, you know, he never, you know, Feynman always just brought up Einstein in just some sort of weak way, you know, and he always said space-time, and he always kind of, like, he didn't want to say space-time because he just didn't want to make time a dimension. And you could just see it. You know, and like I said, when he was talking about the two plates and the electron traveling through it, and he kept emphasizing how it's these weak but prolific, right, photons, right? So there's a lot of them, but they're weak. But you know, I think knowledgeably you can understand that there's no such thing. You know, there's an amount of photons. All the photons are the same. Feynman will tell you that. They all move the same speed. So it has nothing to do with weakness. There's no such thing as a weak photon. There's either a lot of them or not a lot of them. And he kept trying to say there was a lot of them, but somehow there wasn't, you know. And it was, so you could just see how he was struggling with the fact that, yeah, he doesn't have a place they came from. I mean, you know, he's got a real force problem. He can't explain he can't explain electromagnetic force because he doesn't recognize the fact that something goes in to create that force, which is gravity. Yeah. So it doesn't get better on the higher end. I mean, look at Sam Harris and all the assholes he has to deal with. Well, anyway, so Sam Harris has his asshole moment. I mean, he has a, you know, has a real blind spot. Blind spot. Yeah, blind spot. You know, I mean, Muslims are evil, but I mean, they're no more evil than any other fundamentalist kook. So the fact that he'll give, the religious zealots in Israel a break and the religious Christians a break is just kind of silly. Yeah, it's the amplitude of the probability. That's what that's a whole different thing. Technically those are two different subjects, but because that's all Feynman ever talked about in terms of amplitude was the amplitude of the probability of electron going from point A to point B. So it was never really about an amplitude as if something in real physics. So, and I don't think he ever used the word amplitude to describe the strength of a field of photons or the amplitude of a magnetic field. So I don't think that's exactly. So when you say they, well, maybe they do, but Feynman didn't. Feynman restricted the word amplitude to the synthetic idea of a probability. Well, whatever. I don't need that kind of gibberish. I don't even know what you are. You probably got some kind of, looks like Arabic writing, so you're probably some nutty Muslim kook. I got no love for Jews, but I'm just saying there's no point in doing this control thing. It's just silly. Jews go to school, Jews learn how to do shit, Jews have a sense of social responsibility. Jews do something besides go on jihads and, kill people who draw pictures of David. Yeah, they don't waste their time killing people for drawing pictures of David. So Jews are a lot less retarded. But yeah, just as fuck, who cares about this religious shit or even this fucking racial shit? But there's a lot of nepotism in the world, and some of that bleeds into racial nepotism, so to speak, and that's a bad thing. Whitey taking care of Whitey, and none of that is any good. Yeah, well, I'm just not a big fan of Arabic writing. It's just, sorry, it's already tainted, right? It just looks like something written in gasoline. The only thing Arabic is good for is blowing shit up, right? And being obnoxious. They should write dioxin in Arabic. All the poisons, anthrax. They should only write that in Arabic. I mean, it's, sorry, you've just been totally tainted by the bad behavior of the Muslim kooks. So it's another one of those cultures I could really like part of. I like the kind of honor code of the old Arabs, but this whole Muslim religious pussy shit. I mean, that's just so weak. No, you called me a bad name. Oh, you insulted my mommy. Yeah, I mean, they're just whiny little bitches. Oh, I can't make an argument in the world. I have to kill everybody instead. They're just such whiny pussies. Can't fight a fair fight. Where the old Arabs were. These are men. You know what I mean? They didn't fuck around. Pussy bullshit. All right, yes, back on topic. Good idea. So, fish does not affect fish. The only place that light changes frequency is in electron interaction. Yes, field interactions merely change polarization, right, which affects electrons but doesn't affect photons. So fields don't affect photons. So there is no gravitational lensing. Do I have that right? Yes. Can't bend light with you can take all the magnetism in the universe and you cannot bend light unless you're putting the light through a medium that has electrons in it. So without electrons to bend light, you can't bend light. So light is only diffracted by interaction with electrons. You can never, ever, ever, ever change the direction of a beam of light without it hitting an electron. Without that happening, it ain't happening. So that's why they don't have any Hubble images of gravitational lensing, is because it doesn't exist. Yeah, that's why even on Einstein's 100th anniversary, they're not showing you the sun gravitationally moving objects, is because, yeah, they can't move light with the sun. Can't be done. Einstein was in error. But I've already made that argument in a ton of videos on that subject. Yeah, it's just amazing how it answers every question I've posed to it. I mean, I don't want to keep reiterating this, but it's part of the story, right? This is like part of the best part of this Three Bears story of this whole process, was that I started off just finding the Copenhagen crap about photons, the whole idea of mind reading photons nonsensical. So the whole two-slit experiment is what got me on this. And so I started thinking about light, right? So I'm thinking about light and thinking about light, and I just happened to think, well, what's this gravity thing, right? I mean, well, anyway, so I connected, I can't remember exactly how, but I connected gravity to light. And I said, well, what if light didn't have a frequency? That's what I said to myself. What if light didn't have a frequency, right? And so my brain said, well, yeah, if it doesn't have a frequency, how could I even detect it? How could I see it? I can't see it. If it doesn't have a frequency, can't find it. There's no instrument that could see it, right? So photons don't have a frequency. You ain't seeing them. You ain't interacting with them. You ain't knowing they exist. And that's when I turned it into gravity. I said, wow, maybe gravity is just light without a frequency. So you have all these ultra mundane little particles hitting things. And so I was originally thought of them as hitting it and shadows, and it's more complicated than that. It's still a shadow in gravity, but it's a shadow by absorbing polarization in a direction. So that's the technicality of it. It's really a shadow of polarization that you're creating, not a shadow of actual force or actual quantons. So the quantons are still just as, like I said, right around me right now is nuclear energy amount, like nuclear bomb amount of quanta. It's just that it's randomly polarized, so it doesn't blow up all the atoms around me. The atoms around me don't care. It's balanced. But if I imbalance it, that means I give all the polarization going in one direction. If I break the filtered randomness of the circle and release the polarization in streams, then the polarization will disintegrate all the electrons around it and all the protons and all the other stuff and turn it into polarized energy, and it just creates that chain reaction of intense matter annihilation. And but that's around me all the time. It's just in a form that doesn't do any damage. It's harmless to my matter. So that's the amazing part, is to realize that's how dense the ether of gravitons is. The ether of photons is so dense that it's actually as dense as the energy you see in ground zero of a nuclear explosion is around you all the time. That kind of density of quanta exists. That's why gravity can move planets. For fuck's sake, obviously it's got to be a pretty strong force that's moving planets around. Anyway, tangent. So I start off just doing this gravity thing and this shadow thing, and then that led to the velocity thing. So I did inertia. I mean, it totally explained inertia, because I'm saying, yes, inertia is just acquiring more fish going in the direction you're going. And then that led to time dilation, because then it was quite obvious that if you're getting more fish going this way, the fish doing this and this and this and this get less. So you start losing dimensionality in those dimensions. And I kind of thought of it as a spin argument, but obviously if you're spinning and you have to move as you're spinning, you can't spin the same rotations if you're moving laterally as you spin. So a screw isn't going as fast as it would spin if it's not screwing, so to speak. It loses spin speed to do lateral distance. So obviously metabolism is an issue. So the metabolism of your atoms and your electrons and protons and neutrons slows down as you gain velocity. And so that explains time dilation. Bingo, bang, huge. And then I'm saying, I say, oh man, I wonder if I could do gravity with it. I mean, magnetism with this. And yeah, I started thinking about it, and the whole polarization thing just made so much sense. And I started, oh, it's a polarizing filter. Fuck, this is obvious. And it's creating polarization that's either invisible or twice as likely to block something. And 2 plus 0 equals 2, and 1 plus 1 equals 2. So it's gravitationally neutral. And yet it's a significant difference. 0 to 2 is a big difference between a 0 and a 2. And that explains magnetism. And then I did electricity, and so I'm just saying that's the amazing part, is that it just answers every time I challenge this theory to answer a physical phenomenon. It did so perfectly, brilliantly. Just amazing. You can't go faster than light. It screws slower to compensate for added velocity. Do not, oh yes, exactly, do not go faster than light. Quite obviously, you can't move the forward photons faster than light, so obviously they can't either exist all the time. You have to just make them go sit in the corner for a while because they can't go faster than light. Or, yeah, obviously you take their speed and give it to the other asshole, so to speak. So you share their speed. So yes, they essentially have to go some other direction for a while. But the faster and faster you go, the less time they spend going any other direction. So essentially, a photon only has mass in one dimension. The dimension is traveling in. It doesn't have any mass in the other dimensions. It is invisible. Can't exist in those dimensions. It can only exist in the dimension in which it's moving. And it can't exist in the others. So that's part of the reason why it can't interact with anything except an electron. So anyway, like I said, but I could just, I sit here and I marvel, and other people just don't get it. But I mean, I just think it's kind of amazing that I could come up with some crackpot theory about gravity, find out that it's very similar to a 300-year-old theory, Lesage gravity. I mean, that was kind of funny because that happened publicly right in these videos where somebody brought up Lesage gravity. I'm like, well, what the fuck's that? And then they say, well, that's already been debunked. And I was like, oh, I've already been debunked. Damn. And then I found out that the debunk is the most superficial debunk in the universe. I mean, Feynman for 5 seconds talks about raindrops and how if you run in the rain, you hit more rain, and that somehow debunks, particle gravity, which is bullshit. But anyway, well, yeah, there were arguments about this whole thermal problem. I mean, because they were thinking about these being marbles banging into each other in our world, which creates heat, and little pieces of marble fly off. But in physics, physicists should be able to understand the kind of kinetic world where there isn't any friction. And then they could really understand what's really going to happen, is that all the pool balls will hit each other and you won't know. You won't be able to figure it out because everything's going to look like it missed each other at the same time. All the impacts are going to look like they were non-impacts because there's just going to be two things going opposite directions. I mean, in perfectly kinetic interactions, you can't really see anything happen. Everything just kind of goes right through everything, in a funny sense. But anyway, but they're physicists. They can't do that physics thing. But anyway, so that was a real problem because, I was like, well, fuck, I guess I've been debunked. So, but then I found out the debunk was superficial. And so that was good. But it's just kind of funny that, It's a 300-year-old theory that, had to, and it was, the Lesage guy was actually re-arguing another guy's theory from 100 years before. So yeah, so it's like it's just kind of funny that, a guy back in Newton's time comes up with this idea, and some other guy 100 years later tries to re-argue it, and now they just laugh at it, and that's where they should have been the whole time. I mean, Newton liked the idea. That was the funny part. Newton at first liked the idea, but he, I guess he just kind of banged into this wall because they didn't understand, all this complexity of the inner workings of atoms. They were thinking about atoms as hard planets or something, and you're talking about banging moons into them or something. And so I guess he just couldn't quite understand how you could deal with the thermal problem. The fact that the field would end up being like an ether, in the sense that if you move something through it, there's no way it could maintain its velocity, because it would keep banging into more stuff. The faster it went, it would bang into more stuff, and you'd have to explain how it could bang into more stuff without slowing down. And you can only understand that when you understand that head-on collisions in the kinetic universe are meaningless. It's just like they never even happened. And everything's already going the speed of light, so there is no slowing down technically. You can just change what fish you have in the school, but you can't change how fast the fish swim. So you can, there's only one speed happening in the universe. It's the speed of light. There's only one kind of interaction. It's fish. And the schools and everything else are just kind of illusions. They're not nothing. But they're always made of the fish. It's the fish that make the school. The school doesn't make the fish make the school. And physics kind of has this notion that it's the other way around. It's just not getting it. We're just a filtered field. We're not, we're filtered fish. We're not something else. It's like E equals MC squared. It's really that E equals everything. It's all energy. Matter is just kind of it's clearly been filtered out, but it's not unenergy. It's still energy. Yeah, the quantum mechanics aren't like the classic, which is where they messed up. Well, I'm just saying they shouldn't have found any conflict between quantizing, being able to, with the new technology, they were starting to become capable of recognizing Planck constants to understand quanta and understanding the quantum of energy, the photon, for example. I mean, you really can't get anything, that's sort of the quanta. And they should have realized that they had the quanta right in front of them, in the sense that the photon is the quanta. The element moving the speed of light is the quanta. So, but to me, it's just an amazing. I mean, even if somebody thought it was bullshit, they'd have to be impressed. I mean, how can they not concede that it's kind of amazing that I came up with a bullshit idea that explains everything? I mean, isn't that, that's kind of amazing, right? That a bullshit idea could do time dilation, that a bullshit idea could do inertia, that a bullshit idea could do magnetism, that a bullshit idea could do electricity and charge. I mean, that's kind of amazing that somehow that bullshit didn't fall apart somewhere, that somehow it wouldn't be revealed as bullshit, because it would fail colossally at being at all useful in explaining these other things. Because even Einstein's bent space, right? It's kind of a limited use, right? It doesn't really work anywhere but big things. So, and yeah, but the inertia one is such a big one too, because that one, That one's been on. I mean, Einstein didn't explain inertia. Einstein didn't do that one. I mean, I'm just saying that one hasn't been touched by physics. Physics hasn't had any answer from that since day one. They've just been going, well, stuff moves, and once it's moving, it just keeps moving, because it keeps moving. Yeah, yeah, not exactly. So anyway, almost getting to 2 hours, so I'll probably give up at 2 hours. So another 10 minutes of something if anyone's got anything. Yes. Sorry, I should have, like I said, I guess I should have to. I guess I have to do some sort of announcing of these rooms to pick up the pace a little. I just hate the idea of a schedule. But they are sort of consistent. I mean, it's usually 12 o'clock at night, and it's, I mean, it's not that hard to figure out every couple of days. So that's kind of a pattern already. So, let's see, any closing remarks? Yeah, it's about the photon, stupid. The ton, the graviton, quanton, magneton. I just got to come up with some good words here. I hate that they're starting, in a way, I hate that they're starting to use the word graviton because they consider it a virtual particle. That's really irritating, to tonerize something that you're saying is virtual. Should be a law against it. So, anything else? 7 people. Oh, 8. Yeah. So I feel better when there's 10, but yeah. Yeah, it's actually 2 hours in. I should have 10 people watching by now, 10 at least. But no, I failed. Yeah, the interesting part is the implications on the whole Big Bang bullshit. Because in theory, it just doesn't make any sense anymore. Because how did the universe reflect the photons, right? The gravity. What is it reflecting off of? So it's still, you have to put a shell. You really have to put a shell on the Big Bang for it to work. It can't be a plasma. It has to be something with a shell. It had to be the big pipe bomb. It couldn't have been the, well, that's the other thing though, right? They say Big Bang, and frankly, you can't have a bang unless you do have a compression, right? So explosions don't work unless you have compression. And so it's sort of irritating because they call it a Big Bang, but you can't make a plasma bang. Plasmas don't bang. So, I mean, it had to be a compressible, it had to be something that causes compression to have an explosion. Well, it's good that you caught that, so I feel better. There was 12 people for a few seconds. Okay, good. And I'm satisfied, even though we're down to 6. Yeah, yuck. But doesn't matter. I mean, it's a good video. Like I said, this was a good. I like this whole idea of thinking about the color thing again in 3 dimensions, the 3 primary colors. The fact that it's probably revealing the interior structure of an electron is probably, in a sense, being revealed by the fact that it only creates photons at specific frequencies, and those specific frequencies are locked into the structure of the electron. I mean, I should have thought of that before. The electron is really 3 pieces: red piece, blue piece, yellow piece. And it's those 3 pieces in 3 different dimensions that define an electron, and that's, yeah, that'll work. Well, I'm just saying, how do you have the implosion? Then the crust has to explode in, and I'm just saying, fine. I just mean, how are you going to put the energy on the outside, right? We're just going with traditional notions of what happens. So you can think of something compressing. So the universe implodes, in the sense the universe contracts, and then it somehow explodes in this big bang. So then you can think of an oscillation happening. See, us caught in the gravitational pressure field works. So if I turn the Big Bang into like a steel ball with an explosive in the middle, then I can explain that we are like a nuclear bomb. We're one of those, the way the mushroom goes up, well, the same kind of thing happens on the ground, in the sense that there's rings of pressure. So when a nuclear bomb goes off, there's pressure rings, and we're in one of those pressure rings. And that's why there's stuff going different directions. It's because it's bouncing off of the big pieces that still exist. So there's big pieces moving. The little bits, the high-speed little bits are hitting the big pieces and making them move faster, but they're mostly getting reflected because they can't be absorbed by those big pieces. So that would create the reflected energy. But that's the only way I can come up with something that sort of works. But it still, in a sense, doesn't work, because what compressed the original thing, and you'd still have to have the gravity pressure to do that. So you're still stuck with the eternal gravity. And so I think I think the Big Bang is, I don't think it's necessary. And I don't think there's enough background radiation to require it. So I guess I'm saying that I'm tending to believe that whatever this thing is, this material universe, the stuff that's going through it is never coming back. So the photons leaving the known universe, they're not coming back. And the same for the gravity that's moving through it. None of it's, you can't change the direction of the time. You can only change the polarization. So again, if we understand that being the implications of kinetic interaction, that the only thing that can bounce off is polarization, then the things are always going, and they're never coming back. I think that will be the, so I mean, but it could be a spontaneous. If you say the universe only exploded once, well, then you can make this possible, I suppose. But then you can say the gravity was created by the interaction of the hard matter and the photons, the gravitons, and the gravitons are reflecting off the hard matter. So then you can create a temporary gravity that's still leaking and it's still going to expire its energy. But at least you have a source for it, because you didn't have something that compressed the thing. The thing just exploded. So it wasn't compressed, it just exploded. So, but it's hard to imagine exactly how the universe creates a pipe bomb and then explodes it without making it out of something. But it's hard to imagine any explanation, right? All explanations fail for initiation. That's probably why the universe itself is kind of fail. It's because yeah, you can fail, you can't succeed in explaining it. So anyway, almost three minutes left, I think. We made it to 10 people again. Good. No dark matter. Dark matter's, look, it might exist, but it's obviously just made up. There's no physical evidence that it exists, and the only reason why they make it exist is because they're too stupid to figure out the real physics that are causing phenomenon they see. So they don't understand how galaxies even work. So you see, the key thing they think pieces of galaxies are moving too fast, but they're not understanding what a galaxy is. A galaxy is not a solar system. A galaxy has mass on both sides, so it's like the things orbiting each other, the arms are essentially orbiting each other, and the middle part doesn't mean nearly as much in a galaxy as it means in the solar system. We're orbiting the sun, but if you can imagine there would be another Earth on the other side of the sun, then in a sense you could pull the sun out of the equation and just have the two Earths orbit with each other, as long as you've made the momentum of the Earth slower so the gravity would work. So I'm just saying that's what galaxies are doing. And so the spiral arms are the things getting thicker and thicker over time. So the suns that are moving inside the arms of the galaxy aren't just moving towards the middle of the galaxy, they're also moving towards the middle of the spiral arm. So they have more than one velocity vector. So they're not only moving towards the center, they're not only being accelerated towards the center of the galaxy, they're being accelerated to the center of the spiral arm. That's why they get the velocity numbers wrong. So that reason for creating dark matter is stupid, because there, I just explained it. The other reason they use it is this to explain preposterously stupid lensing images, where the lens is huge, the whole size of a galaxy, and there's no possible, the gravity at the location where they're saying there's light is being bent, the gravity at that location is 0.01000000001 meter per second per second. I mean, it's a fraction of the surface gravity on Earth. It's a fraction of the surface gravity on the moon. There's no way that gravity could bend light. And so the only way they can make something capable of bending the light is they have to create dark matter so they can create gravity to make it possible to bend the light. So you can see it's just contrived. Dark matter is just, it's God of the gaps glue. They might as well just say God did it. It's that bad. Dark matter is as theoretically vacuous. It's evidentially vacuous as saying God did it. It's no better. It's God glue. It's horrible science. It's completely made up. And it's illogical. Just think about it on its face. Oh, there's matter that's nothing like matter. It doesn't reflect any kind of radiation in the universe. It doesn't behave anything like regular matter, except it has gravity. Well, isn't that magical and special? It's silly and stupid. Yes, there's Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell is just like humans, except she doesn't have any material form, and she doesn't have to go poo-poo, and but she can fly, and she can do all kinds of special things. Yes, Tinkerbell isn't real, and dark matter isn't real. They might as well just say Tinkerbell is bending the light. They might as well say Tinkerbell is moving the suns too fast. Let's see, it's more that we don't see more of these big bangs or evidence of others. Well, we see supernovas, but I don't know exactly, you're not going to, if a big bang happens, you're not going to see it, because it's going to fuck you up. Well, the point would be is that in the Big Bang, the plasma wouldn't contain, the plasma technically would be the Big Bang would be converting everything into radiation, moving at the speed of light. So again, how you explode this plasma is the problem. So to create the Big Bang, you're particularizing. So that's what causes bangs. Bangs are caused because you basically annihilate structure. You convert the E equals mc squared part. You convert matter back into energy, and that creates bang. So, and the problem is you can't move plasma the speed of light, because then it becomes light. It becomes particles again. So you have a real problem condensing something further away from the explosion. It doesn't make much sense to think that the bits farthest away from the explosion will somehow come together and make a new bomb. I mean, that whole thing doesn't really work very well, right? I mean, the little bits as they get further apart aren't in some way going to be pulled together, right? That just doesn't make much sense. So anyway, I was reading Superior Mind's comments. So he said, it's weird that we don't see more of these big bangs or evidence of others. And then he said, there's plenty of plasma and gas to diffract the light. Yeah, so you just still have to explain how the plasma and the gas got 15 billion light years, technically, or something like that, away from the bang. But clearly the universe is much older than what we see as time based on distance, because to get to those distances, that took time. So whatever number they give for the age of the universe, you probably have to just double it right on the face to explain how the stuff got to that location in the first place. So when we're seeing something 15 billion light years away, it couldn't get 15 billion light years away unless there was another 15 billion light years to get there in the first place. I mean, first the thing had to go out there before the light could come off of it, So clearly there has to be a lot more time before, the light got shot from the object. So when the light came from the object is not when the universe began. The universe began. So when they say the universe is 15 billion years old, it's just wrong, because it's at least 30. Because it's at least, it's at the speed of light, this stuff can't get there. We know it can't go that fast. So it's not even 15 to 30. It's more like 15 to 45 or some other bigger number, because you could say maybe the matter could go half the speed of light, but it certainly can't go anywhere close to the speed of light. So, the universe is 45 billion years old then. I mean, that's just logic. I don't know how they don't get that one right. I mean, I don't know why they keep saying things like the universe is 15 billion years old when it has to be older than that, because the shit had to get there, and it can't get there instantaneously. I mean, you can't get spread out instantaneously. It's just silly. Well, they have that whole silly part where they say the Big Bang had that accelerated moment where it expanded 50 million times its size in a millisecond or something. It's just, this is more like where they're just chasing bad math. So they want to fix their silly equations. So they just put something stupid into the silly equation to fix it, and it's just silly. So anyway, I have accomplished my task. 2 hours is more than enough, I guess. Thank you and such to the, I mean, I hate to, I don't mean to reward people for saying complimentary things or, doing that, because that's just kind of bullshit. But, I do appreciate the support now and then. it's really obnoxious just to be ridiculed, you know, with personal attacks that have nothing to do with the argument. But, you know, it's the price you pay for getting in this game. This whole truth thing, defending the truth, is you're not going to have a good time because nobody wants to hear it. Yeah. So anyway, I own 11 watchers, so it's a good time to leave too. So anyway, thanks mostly, and this mouse, what the hell is wrong with it? I mean, why should banging it around help fix it? I mean, it's some kind of defect. I should be able to figure out. I mean, it's a little light in there. I don't know. It isn't dirty or anything. I don't know what it's doing. Yeah, blow on it. Does that fix it? No. That wasn't a good idea, Gary. Maybe it needs a official pad or something. I don't know what it is. It's not. No, maybe it's just this battery suck. I don't know. Maybe something is something. Maybe I just dropped something on the computer. Maybe it's a shitty doggle-y thing. Come on, mouse. I'm trying to close this damn room. I can't get that mouse to work. There it goes. All right, anyway, so until next time, thanks, and till the next time and such.